Excellent. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining today's virtual Agile meetup. And it's lovely to see some returning faces and also some new faces. Today's session, we have the wonderful David Music to come and talk to us about fighting climate change with the help of Agile. So something that are two very, very top hot topics at the moment. So really interested in hearing what you've got to say to that. But we just before we start to get into some of these interesting details, as always, we just want to say thank you because everybody's time is so precious. And the fact that you're here with us either this evening, this morning, or this lunchtime, whatever place you are in the world, we are always grateful for that. So just to give you a bit of a heads up in terms of questions and anything that you have, David is very happy for you to just come and call out your questions. So you can either unmute, as you know, we're fairly hands-off facilitators as the co-hosts here, or you can pop your question if you don't feel so confident to do that, or if you just don't like to unmute in the chat. We'll pick those up and address those as and when we see them. Or you could do an interpretive dance if you like, but there is no guarantee that anybody will understand that. But you know what, I'd love to experiment. That's what we're all about. Next thing is, as you know, we're recording. We just said that. So yeah, if you don't want to be on camera, then please don't put your camera on. Otherwise, please do. We'd love to see your faces. The time box for today is 90 minutes. So we started at 6. Oh, we started on the hour, I should say. And we have got 54. No, it's less than that. Anyway, hour and a half. Just under. I can't do the maths today. I've had a heavy day. Sorry about that. And moving on, again, the chat and questions and stuff. As you know, if you've got something interesting, you think that there's a connection there, and you want to share knowledge, whack it in the chat. We'd love to hear how you guys are learning and any sort of sources and bits and treats of information. Please use that as much as you like. Next up, for those who are regulars, we play a lovely game called Rock, Paper, Scissors. I love this game because, it's known. Everybody knows Rock, Paper, Scissors pretty much. And then I say that and realise, oh my gosh, if there's somebody on the call who doesn't know it, then hopefully I haven't made you feel uncomfortable. And you know what? It's okay. If you don't know Rock, Paper, Scissors, it's fairly simple. I use this a lot with teams. It's a great decision tool. It allows everybody to have their voices heard because it's a 1, 2, 3 effect. And so let's go forth and give it a go. So right, I'm trusting everybody who is not on camera to be doing this with us. I would love to see your best rock. Is this me? Oh, slight delay there, maybe. I don't know. Yes, thank you. Lovely rock. And how about a paper? Oh, beautiful. I love the floaty papers. It's always really nice to see. Also the shocked papers that you've got. And then a pair of scissors. Now be careful with this one, depending on your day. Oh yeah, we got some good days, some bad days in there, but brilliant. Lovely. So all that's going to happen now is we are going to gauge the room, and you're going to show me a rock, a paper, or a scissor to the answer of these questions. So the first question is this: if we asked you to recite principle 8 of the Agile principles, could you do it? I'm actually going to have to go with scissors. I actually thought I printed it out, but what I do know is it's around sustainable pace, I believe. There's a little tip there. Number 2, if we asked you to, if you bought sustainable materials, oh my goodness, I've messed up my question. Sorry about this. Something around sustainable. We'll move on. Sorry about that. The last question is: I'm interested in learning more about how to bring people, products, and the planet together. Okay, good. That was a safe one. Yeah, loads of rocks out there. Good. you're in the right place, which is really great. So thank you very much for playing this game. Hopefully your fingers are now warmed up, because you always need your fingers when you're on a Zoom call. And we can probably move on with this. So something in us that I know that you talk about a lot, obviously, is around sustainability, product, planet, and people. And we've got this lovely quote, actually: not everything that you can count does in fact count, and not everything that counts can be counted. So over to you, Ines.
Yeah, and as today's speaker mentioned, we won't be learning new frameworks or tools, but maybe you'll get inspired to refocus on what really counts, which is creating value. And also, as some of you know, the subject at hand is especially important for me and the work that I do. So how can we reduce our footprint in our home, which is a finite planet? So yeah, Helen, take it away for the grand reveal. You mentioned David, but tell us.
Okay, thank you, Ines. Great. So, David, thank you so much for coming today. It's been a while since we've had you booked in. I think it was back in November 2022 when our paths crossed, and it was just great to be able to hear a bit more about not only sustainable practices, but actually the fact that you're supporting organizations in an agile way, a sustainable way, and it's not even in IT, it's in construction of all places. And when do we hear about that? We don't hear about that very often. It's always, IT, tech, all of that sort of stuff. So that's pretty cool. And this year, actually, this is kind of kicking off how we're going to be looking at things in the meetup just going forward, is that we're starting to bring in people from different companies that drive change and have great leaders in the industry like yourself, David, to talk about agile outside of IT, like I said, because it is actually a thing, and it would be great if we knew more about it and how it could work. So agility is about flexibility to change, being able to adjust, twist, turn, and thrive in an ever sort of turmoil, turbulent, environment. So yeah, I'm going to hand over to you now, David, if you would like to take the stage.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, first of all, thanks a lot for having me here, for inviting me. Yeah, was really happy to get the invitation, and also that it's now a bit earlier than originally planned. Yeah, first of all, it will be a bit about IT. So Agile was completely without IT is not, well, it's possible, but still I'm from IT. So shortly a bit about me. I'm, I said now multiple times, David. I'm a product manager working in a Berlin-based startup who is actually building software for the concrete and cement industry. But what we realized is to achieve our mission, which is helping the industry to decarbonize and to reduce the carbon footprint of the industry, only providing software is not enough. So we also have to support them, and to also support them in, well, with the help of Agile in a certain way. And I will talk a bit more about this in a second in the talk. Yeah, I said the talk is, you will not learn any new techniques. I will just hopefully give you a nice insight into this industry and what's going on there, why is it a problematic industry, and what we can do actually, and what is done actually right now to decarbonize it, to make it less having an impact on the environment. And as I really like this rock, paper, scissors idea, I wanted to catch it up also and start with a few questions. And the first question I would like to ask is, again, like rock is yes, paper is maybe, scissors is no. Do you know actually, or who knows what concrete is actually? Who knows what concrete is? A lot of maybes, a lot of no's. Okay, that's good. Who knows what cement is? Okay, a lot of no's, maybes. And who of you knows what the relation of concrete and climate change or CO2 or carbon emissions is? why this is connected. There's one yes, maybe. Okay, that's good to start. Okay, yeah, as said, my talk is you will not go out and have learned anything new that you can apply probably to your daily work, but maybe it triggers some ways of thinking, maybe some refocusing. That would be great. And now let me quickly rearrange my setup here so that I can start my presentation. So is this big green bubble that I don't see? Okay, so now moving this over. Okay, so a lot of control bars here. Okay, so yeah, my topic today is fighting climate change with the help of Agile. And yeah, as I just asked what concrete is, and I saw a lot of maybes and no's. It's great that I started with this part now here. So what is concrete? Concrete is a building material, and to be said, the most used building material in the world. It's known already for centuries. Already in the Roman Empire, they used some kind of concrete. And in its basic version, concrete is something really stupid. It's just a mix of sand, gravel, water, and cement. And I guess what water, sand, and gravel is kind of clear. And the cement part, what makes the cement part in there, that is basically the stuff that glues everything together. So if you mix all these components, what you get is some kind of a dough that over time hardens and gets really rock solid. And what is doing that is the cement inside this concrete. When it reacts with the water, it starts getting solid. And now the question is, what is cement? Cement is a powder. If you buy it, you can go to the Baumarkt, whatever that is in English. So the store for home improvement equipment, and you can buy a bag of cement, and it's a powder that you can mix with water. Cement consists of what is called clinker. That's the biggest part, and SCMs, which is an abbreviation for supplementary cementitious materials. So in the industry, it's random stuff that they just throw in to make it a bit more, but that has no big effect on the properties of the clinker or of the cement, which is starting hardening when it gets in contact with water. And this clinker is basically the bad guy in this equation, because what is clinker? How do you produce clinker? To get clinker, what you need to do is you need to take limestone, which you can just, is available in high amounts, that is ground a bit coarsely, sometimes a bit finer, and this is put into a rotating kiln, so an oven. And there's a lot of hot air blown into this kiln so that the ground limestone gets heated. And what happens basically is, if you have limestone, chemically speaking, that's mostly CaCO3. And in this hot oven, the limestone reacts with the hot air, and what comes out is clinker. And clinker, chemically speaking, is CaO. And if you compare these two things, what is missing here is CO2. So basically what happens in this hot oven is that the hot air takes out of the limestone CO2. The CO2 is blown into the air. That's what happens when you produce clinker. And this is so heavy that when you produce 1 ton of clinker, you emit 800 kilograms of CO2, which is, of course, a huge amount of CO2 that is produced here. And one of the problems is that the CO2 is not produced because you have a hot flame here with the hot air where you burn coal, gas, waste, whatever, but it's really taken out of the limestone and blown into the air. So even if you basically replace the source of heat here with some eco-friendly and renewable energies, you will always have these CO2 emissions. And that's why it's a really bad thing. And that is the reason why 8% of worldwide carbon emissions are emitted by the concrete industry. And 8% is a huge amount. If concrete would be a country, it would be the 3rd country in the list of countries emitting CO2 after China and the US. This is roughly 3 gigatons of CO2 every year that is blown into the air. So that's a huge risk and a huge problem for climate change, for our environment, for the world we're living in. So this is definitely something. If we want to reach the 2 degrees targets, we have to do something here. We cannot proceed with it. there's often one idea or one thing that people ask or say when we talk about, okay, concrete is bad. That's true. So people say, okay, let's replace it. Don't use concrete anymore. Let's build more with wood. Not maybe in this way how it's shown there. You can really build nice buildings with wood these days. But there is one problem with that, with replacing concrete. That's a quote from Bill Gates. And humankind is building so much that by the year 2060, the world's building stock is expected to double, which just means that from now until 2060, we will each and every month build a new New York City. And I think that is a huge amount of stuff that we build. And of course, we should think about if we really need to build so much, but I think in the Western countries, we can say this. In other countries, they should not suffer because, the Western world started earlier with polluting the atmosphere. In other terms, the only thing that humankind consumes more than concrete is water, volume-based. So the pure amounts of concrete that we are using as humans is incredible. So we cannot simply say, okay, let's replace it with wood or with steel or with other materials, because there are none that we have available in such high amounts. So that's a problem. We have to somehow continue using concrete, but make this a bit smaller. And there is really good news. And the good news is that we know, and that already for decades, how to reduce the carbon emissions of concrete by roughly 40 to 60%. So we could easily cut this in half. And we know how to do this for 10, 20, even a bit more than 20 years, I think. The question is, how can we do that? So if we think about what concrete really is, and here it's a bit more realistic, because it's not always as easy that you have water, sand, gravel, and cement. Usually you also have some chemicals inside to guarantee certain properties. So what we can do is actually, we can just use less of this clinker, which is the bad guy in the equation, and to use more of these SCMs, so these supplementary cementitious materials. That works. That is something which was proven in the labs 20, 25 years ago, that we can do that, and we still have the same properties of the concrete. Maybe we have to add a few more additives and a few more chemicals, but still, this could cut the CO2 emissions of this construction material by just 40 to 60%. But, of course, there's a but, otherwise people will do it already. Handling these kind of concretes is super tricky, because concrete had basically, or has very, very nice properties. And one of them is it's available in large amounts. And the second is it's really, really hard to mess it up. So I don't know if you recently have seen a construction site somewhere, probably, or like in the urban areas especially, when you see the people working there and how they work, that's not lab conditions. That's sometimes during rain or during hot summer, or like, with wooden planks that they are just using for mixing the stuff. So you can do a lot with concrete without really breaking its most important property, which is strength. That's today's concretes. If we would move over to these other concretes where we use less clinker and which are very, very more environmental friendly, this property that you can really not break the concrete, those go away immediately. So there are only very little rooms for errors, sometimes even no room for errors. And what happens if you have an error in the concrete is that the building that you build will just break down. That is not a theoretical aspect, that is just reality. If the concrete is not strong enough that you use for a basement or for some pillars or whatever, they will just break and the whole building will crash. So it's really a problem if we cannot handle this concrete properly. Some basics here, I will not go too much into detail, because I mean, of course, you can have hours of lectures on concrete and its properties, but there are two really important main aspects of concrete. The one is the compressive strength. So how much load can you put on a basement or on a pillar before it crashes? And the second property that is really important is the consistency, or like the workability. Yeah, you can see on this picture how concrete is poured on a construction site. You have a huge pump, you have a huge of pipes, and then the concrete falls out of it, and then it's moved around on the construction site. So if it's too stiff, so too hard, this is not possible anymore. You cannot work with it anymore. You cannot make sure that it really goes into each and every corner. So the workability and the strength is very, very important. The problem is that those two are orthogonal to each other. So the easier it is to work with the stuff, with the concrete, the less strength is in there, and vice versa, which with the old concretes is not a problem because it's very forgiving. But with the new concretes with less CO2 in it, that's a problem. That becomes a really, really big problem, because then you really need to find the sweet spot between the strengths and the workability and the consistency. There's another good news. It is tricky to handle those concretes. It is a problem. It is not easy, but it's easy to handle this, or it gets easier when we use software. There is an option that we can use software to make the concrete easier handleable and better handleable. And another good news is that all the people, all the so-called plant control providers, so the people who are building the software and the hardware for managing a concrete plant where the concrete is produced, they all know this, how to do that. And they all offer this functionality already in their systems, and that's already for years. Yeah. So if we summarize this whole thing, we know that we have a huge problem. Yeah, we have 8% of worldwide carbon emissions coming from the concrete industry. We know a working solution, yeah, cutting these so-called clinker factors, so using less of the clinker who is emitting all the CO2. We also know that we can support this whole thing with software to make it easier to work with. And the fourth thing that I haven't mentioned so far, but also for the producers of concrete, producing less carbon-heavy concrete is profitable, because the expensive part in the concrete is the cement. So using less cement makes it more profitable, makes it cheaper to produce. So actually, we have a problem, we have a solution, which is also profitable for the producers. So the question is, why is it not moving forward? But that's not the question I wanted to ask. Yeah, so what is the problem? If we have a problem that we can fix, and that has a big impact and a positive side for the money side, what is the problem, and why am I talking at an Agile meetup about this? And one of the big reasons I'm talking about this is because what you see here on the left side is a screenshot from a plant control system. And this is not a plant control system from the early 90s. That is from today. And I would say that this this lower side of the screen looks a bit like a UI from hell, to be honest, if you ask me. But that is the software landscape that people have to work with. And it's not only that it doesn't look really nice, also handling the stuff is super annoying and super unintuitive. And there's one big problem with the plant control software that we have there. A is the people, when they buy the software for the concrete plants, they have super long-lasting contracts. So 8 to 10 years is the normal range for how long you have to live with one software license. Then secondly, the people who are building the software are actually coming from the plant control system. So they're coming often from a time when there was no software to control the plant, but mechanics or mechanical engineering and all the stuff is more their favorite, like their expertise, not so much the software side. Then the third thing is that the people who develop the software never to talk to any of their users or the people working in the concrete plants, and that is not exaggerated. We talk to a lot of the people who build the software for the concrete plants, and one of the questions we often ask is, okay, how do people use that? How do they interact with that? And we literally got the answer, how should I know? I never talk to them, I don't care. So there's one really big thing is that they're really focusing just on delivering the software because they have a contract with the company, and not really on understanding the problems of the users. They just have their product, they sell it, they ship it, and that's it. So in the end, this software just really is, well, sucks. And if you look at these 4 points here, this might sound familiar to you. It's basically all the right side of the Agile values. Now we have contract negotiation, following fixed processes, fixed plans, and the software is really not supporting the needs of the users. So we entered the market. As said, we are a startup in Berlin. We entered this industry, and what we did is actually no rocket science from a software development point of view. We did very basic things that I hope that everyone who is working in software today should say, well, that's nothing new. So we talked to the users. We did things like incremental release and delivery. We tried to solve the users' problems and not really interfering with the daily work, not pushing additional load on them, but taking load from their shoulders. And we built, and that's really something in this industry that can make a huge difference. We built a modern web app that can be used from any device that every person in the lab can use. You don't need a special device that is attached to a certain computer to use the stuff, but you can use it from everywhere. So bottom line, we worked in a modern, agile way to deliver our software. And yeah, we did not reinvent the wheel. We were building actually the same features as the plant control providers, but just in a different way and with a more focus on the users. And what came out of this already is basically that we saw the effect. We immediately saw that we could support the users to handle these concretes better. So what you see here, the so-called flow spread. So basically the way how to measure the consistency of a concrete. And before they used our software, it fluctuated quite heavily. And after they used it, it starts getting really, really more stable quality. And also what we saw for our users, the clinker factor, so the amount of clinker in the concrete for our users, because of the stabilization of the fluctuations, got down. And this is not super huge here, this 0.4 percentage points actually, not this 4 percentage points, sorry. But what this means is just by using an agile way of delivering software which is focused on the user, we were able to save from the point where we started working with users and when they started seeing the results. So that's the software side. Really just the difference we had was we delivered in an agile way with agile methodologies, and we had directly impact, even though we did not invent any new fancy technology or any new fancy feature. This just worked. But as we said before, it's not only about software, because step and failing. And that's something that really is in the industry heavy. Interesting. Okay.
Sorry about that, David. Thank you.
All good. All good. Okay. So as said, so the industry is very strict. They don't move very, very on, and no one really dares to do the first step, to be the first one really moving into the direction of changing something. So what we pushed for was a very special, what we could call MVP. So testing a hypothesis, which was that low carbon concrete is possible, and not only in the lab, but really under real life conditions. And of course, I mean, we also used it to test our application to see if our software support this, but also to make the industry moving a bit faster. So we said, if we can prove this hypothesis, that will kick off things. And luckily, we looked a bit at the landscape. Okay, who is actually involved there? And that's super complex. If you want to build a building, or like a skyscraper, if it's not your own house, but a public building somewhere in the city, a lot of parties are involved. And we luckily found a partner who was also really interested in doing something more sustainable. So we partnered up with a so-called Edge, which is a project developer who is planning and building buildings all around the world. And they were planning, when we talked to them, this so-called Edge East Side Tower in Berlin, which will be the Amazon headquarters in Berlin, and is right now Berlin's highest building with, I don't know how many meters, but 34 floors or something. And the 32nd and 33rd floor of this building are built with a very special concrete, which has 55% less carbon than the other concrete used in that building. And what we wanted to do with that is really proving that this works. And to get there, we also applied again these agile ideas in a certain way. Because what you can see here, this is usually how the process of building a building works. You have Allianz, which is in this case the investor. They want to spend money on building something. Then you have Edge, which is the company who is planning the building, where to build something, how should it look like, what should it be, living or working, whatever. Then there are other companies involved who are then really doing the planning of the building. You have, with, for example, Zyblin is a company who is building the building, so the construction workers. You have the concrete provider. You have the company who is providing the chemicals and the materials for producing the concrete. So you have a lot of people there. And they all talk to the next company in the row, but that's it. So the company Edge, they were really interested in building a more sustainable building, but they had no clue about concrete. They didn't know that concrete produces 8% of worldwide carbon emissions. And when we told them, they were like, oh, that's good to know, and can we do something? So what we did there is basically we brought everyone together, all these parties involved, so that they talk with each other. So that Edge could say, okay, we want to have a more sustainable concrete. They directly talk to the concrete producer. They talk then again to the construction company, and so on and so forth. And we brought everyone together to plan this, to say, okay, how can we make these 2 floors happen with the low carbon concrete? And it had an effect on the whole thing, because what we see here is basically you have, again, in the top right, again, this picture, how concrete is poured. Usually you have a pump standing at the bottom of the building, which takes the concrete and pumps it into a pipe almost 300 meters far away until it reaches the top of the building. 33rd floor, you can imagine that is super high. But that is the way how concrete is poured. And what you can see in the middle, that is a so-called Stopfer. That means basically that the concrete blocks the pipe and hardens inside the pipe, which is, I think, the worst thing that can happen, because you have a huge metal pipe full of concrete and no concrete goes through it anymore. You cannot continue producing. And usually what happens in those cases is they stop producing until it's fixed. And there's a lot of complaints, a lot of going back and forth, who is now paying for this concrete, and so on and so forth. But as everyone was sitting at the same table and everyone was talking, okay, we want to prove that it works, we want to make it happen. What they did is they reacted, and they used a different way of pouring the concrete to the 33rd floor, which is this yellow thing there in the back, which is called the bomb. A term that is nowadays not so great, but that's how it's called. So they just changed the way, adapted to the needs of the concrete to make it happen. And in the end, everyone was happy because it worked. The delay using this bomb against the pump was not super great, is super large. So everyone was happy in the end. It worked. These 2 floors are produced with a 55% less carbon heavy concrete. And it's proven that this worked. So basically what happened there is only these 2 floors was an MVP, but we already with this saved 85,000 kilos of CO2, which is roughly how much 7 German people emit in a year. So 7 people can more or less live for free CO2 emission based, even though we don't count this like this, but to get some idea of how much CO2 was saved with 2 floors. So imagine having 35 floors doing with that. That would have been a huge impact already. But the most important thing is that by just having this MVP, showing that this works, going this way, we had a huge echo in the media, a lot of press coverage. We had videos made, podcasts, press articles, everything, which now triggered more and more companies to do the same thing. And they're approaching us to get some infos, but they are also doing their own things. And what's really happened is, by showcasing that it works, doing small steps, 1 floor at a time, we should show, okay, it works. And now other people are also doing this and starting to work in this direction. And probably the most important thing is something that we talked with cement producers already for a long time, now had really kicked off by doing that, which is basically that now I think 5 companies in Germany applied for a new permit of a new type of cement, which would also have around 40% less clinker in it, so 40% less carbon emissions in the cement, only by doing this one lighthouse project in the end. I would call it MVP, and by really doing this, bringing everyone together, getting together through it, collaborating, and having the clear goal in mind that this should somehow be shown. So summarizing, and sorry for the pathos, it's a bit heavy now. What I wanted to transmit and to think about that when we build products, also software products, we can have an impact. And I mean, we often talk about impact on the users, changing their life, etc., which is important. But we can also, especially if we are in the B2B market, in the B2B business, we can also have an impact on the environment, and not only changing the way our users work and live, but also how basically everyone on the planet lives. And that is a chance that we have. And I think that's from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So we should also think about how can we use that in a good way. Because what I said before, we have an industry that exists for years, for decades, that knows actually how to do this stuff. But the only thing that hindered them from doing that was that they just didn't follow, or that they did follow these old patterns of how to build software. And by just doing it in a bit different way, the effect was heavy. And that's basically the second thing also to come out, is the way how we build products is important. And I mean, often when you are in discussions about Agile and why is Agile so great, it's just a buzzword, it's just a mode or whatever. This is, I think, a great example to say, no, Agile is not just a buzzword. It's not just Scrum. It's not just, fancy titles of product owner, Scrum Master, whatever. It's really, if you're just following the principles, following the values, it has, or it can have, a really difference and big value. So again, a little pathos, work in Agile way will not save the environment, but it can really, really help doing this. And yeah, I said, enough pathos for now. Thank you very much. Would be super happy to get some questions. I heard that there were also a few in the beginning, like sent in written form. Yeah, super happy to hear more. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, David. And yes, we have one question that's actually just come up in the chat, so I'll ask that to warm us up. Was the old software bad specifically because it wasn't agile, or because it was lazily written by entitled programmers?
No, I would say it was because it wasn't agile, because agile for me is user-focused, interacting with the users, trying to solve a problem. That is for me what is in agile. So this user-focused, I want to deliver value and not software, and those kind of things. And when we talk to the producers, that's why what I tried to say earlier is, they were really just interested in delivering software. They had a contract with some person in the concrete company to deliver a plant control software. That's what they did. They were not talking to the users who were actually using in the end the software. And that's why the features they built in. So that's a feature that really helps you to control the consistency of the concrete. That's a very special feature. That's also the stuff we built. They just build it and throw it out. And we talk to the users in the plant, why don't you use this? It's there already, why don't you use it? And the answer was, well, I would need to calibrate it. That's super annoying. I have to go back and forth and click 8 times and then remember a few things. And just the process of using it was so ugly for them and so unhandy that they did not use it. And that was one question to the users to get this information and to change this basically. So for me, it was really that this was so easy to solve by the minimum basic agile ideas.
Yeah, thanks. And if I can piggyback on that a little bit, because I just had a conversation before this session, and when I do a little bit of work around programming, a lot of what we talk about sometimes is about the design of it, so that one, it can be more agile moving forward. And we are very lucky because there is technologies popping up left, right, and center that will help us to be decoupled and easy to plug in and out. But also, one of the questions that we had, and I'll be interested, how do you account for the software that you build in terms of How do you use Agile, or how can you make sure that you also manage the volume of data and the energy consumption of the product that you're building?
So you mean basically of our side of the software, the energy consumption for our things. Yeah, what we do is, I mean, we check this regularly. I mean, our company is really built on the value, on the mission to reduce the carbon footprint. So it's a discussion also in our company. What do we actually do? I mean, we are doing machine learning, which is energy consumpting. What we actually do is we track this. I mean, there are tools to calculate how much energy is consumed, what is the CO2 footprint of our tools. I mean, the good thing is we are in a so carbon-heavy industry that the amount that we save actually, because what we do is we save with our tool, we save also energy on the producer side. And this balances out immediately. So because they have so heavy machines on their side, what we do is ignorable, more or less. So of course we have to subtract it from what we really achieve in the end. But yeah, we calculate this, we look at this, but whenever we compare it to what we save on the consumer side, on the user side, we are on a good side of things. Was that a question?
A little bit, but we have another one. Nikki, go for it.
David, thank you so much for your presentation. I feel really grateful to kind of get that breakdown of specifically the difference between concrete and cement. Like, I knew that these were energy intensive processes that were causing carbon, but it was really nice to see the science on it, which was very helpful. And I'm really struck, and maybe you brought this up earlier in your presentation and I just sort of missed it, but alchemy, right? It strikes me that you're a software firm that's really focused on sort of chemical, like software that is supporting kind of chemical processes. Maybe I'm wrong there, but could you tell us a little bit about how you guys transitioned into this industry, or were you guys born from the construction industry?
So the name is Alchemy, so chem, not chem, and the cem is basically the European norm for cements. The cements are always called CEM 1, CEM 2, so Al-Cem is the cement comes in there. So it's really a cement and concrete company. And yeah, how we got in there is that one of our founders is actually the son of the owners of a German cement producer. So he grew up, he always told us, like during his vacations, he always played in the cement plant basically, and helped also when he got a certain age, he also of course helped out there. And he always grew up, and I mean, he is one, like his parents who are running the plant, they are really modern in a certain sense, that they also always told him basically, okay, the industry we are in is polluting the environment, so we have to change something. So they also were always one of the first really doing something. They are also not the first company who was really or who applied for the special permit for this new cement type. So that's how we got into this industry, because then our founder, Leo, he basically said, okay, I will at some point, this will be my plant, and I want to do something to reduce the emissions from this industry. And that's how we got in there. He then met our other founder, Robert, in a startup incubator program. Robert brought the whole machine learning topic in. They met, they saw, okay, there is a potential to have an impact, to change something. And then, well, that's how everything started. And I think that's also the main reason how we could enter into this industry, because usually cement plants are nothing really open, that you really say, okay, let's do something for cement. And of course, it was helpful for us to have the son of the owners coming to a plant and saying, hey, I would like to try out my software, helped, of course, a lot, even though we are completely independent from them. But yeah, I said it helped to enter there. But that's also maybe something to think about, that even though such an industry might be looking very closed, it is always worth trying to knock there and say, hey, can we somehow help you? Because the landscape there is, especially in cement and concrete, the providers that are available are old school providers, not really modern, not really going. So try it out in the end.
Just to piggyback up on that, thank you so much. And also that was really illuminating too, right? Is like, congratulations to this this person who has been in this family business for a while and is like willing to make change, right? That's huge. And it just sort of strikes me that you're kind of raising the issues of like, there's so many industries that are wasteful, and specifically their waste can be a function that a software solution could be applied to. And I feel like the real call to action from your talk is like, how can those of us in the software industry really find those avenues find those people who are interested in making changes, and then offer our services. Like, obviously this is a room of people who have the services necessary. So thanks for the inspiration.
Yeah, go for it, Mary Ellen.
Not so much a question, but again, I just wanted to thank you for the really interesting talk. I didn't expect it to be half as interesting and kind of, that you had gotten so far in being successful. And I just love how you brought everybody together to collaborate. It's one of my favorite things about Agile, and why it sparked my interest when I was introduced to it, that you really get people together and they actually came up with better ideas by getting them talking. And also it's very, very timely, isn't it? Because all of the, at least the big corporates, they're all, saying they will be carbon neutral by 2050 or 2030 or whatever year they're picking. So it's nice to see that, okay, Amazon, one of the biggest players in the world, came on board, but it's nice to see that you have all these other big players coming on as well. And, you're also seeing it in the financial world and investments. They're looking at the ESG factor or whatever it's called, so it's going to start hopefully impacting people's investments as well. So yeah, thank you so much. And Helen and Ines, I came because you always have really interesting meetups, but I wasn't expecting it to be half as interesting and enlightening. So thank you.
Oh, fabulous. Cheers for that. And just thinking about investments, I'll give you homework to all of you if you are interested. So one thing you can do at personal level, then apply at household level, and then try to apply in your organization is find out where your money goes, right? Check out banks. Where are the investments? Which banks are you supporting? Where is that money going? Check out your pension schemes, right? We don't think about these things often. I changed all my pensions to something that is called ethical portfolio, right? Imagine a world where the default pension is an ethical portfolio, right? If we were asked, do you want an unethical one? That'll be a very different conversation. And then the third one is about insurance, right? So homework, check where your money goes, banks, pensions, insurance. Today is something we can all make a difference. And then there's a question in the chat, actually, and I would like to link it a little bit with another question that we had in advance, is that cement, infrastructure, building, normally, all of that are industries that move really slow, right? So what's your insights on the matter of, overcoming that challenge, with also the challenges of the use of a new type of concrete that maybe hasn't been tested or used extensively, right? And not approved by, certain entities. What sort of things you found along the way? Because I'm sure that wasn't easy. I think you mentioned in a previous conference as well.
Yeah, so it is moving very slowly. That is true. And it's really, if you talk to the people and really try to find out what's the reason, it's really, no one wants to be the first one who really, openly speaking, really fucks it up in the end. So if you are the first one moving and you build something that then crashes, that's really the problem. No one wants to be that one. No one wants to be that person. So it is moving slowly. There are, and that's a good thing to see, there are initiatives in the companies trying to do a bit of stuff. So one of our clients also, they build a huge carbon capture facilities in one of their plants to trying to remove it, even though that's, I think, covering not even 10% of their emissions or something, but still it's something going on. I think the biggest problem is that they don't really feel the pain yet so much. I mean, they all know we should, but they are still, there are companies. So this whole, what we have also in Europe, this carbon emission trading system, with the free allocations, they are all scared of these free allocations going away, because that's the moment when they will have to move, because that's when they will feel, okay, now it's really costing money, and that will change the stuff. But as long as this doesn't really kick in and they don't get it into the money, it will continue moving slowly. But on the positive side, as I said, there are things, or like there are projects in each and every plant trying to get forward. But there is no holy grail, and that's also to be said. And I think, or like my impression is a bit, they are all waiting for the one solution that fits everything. But in the end, it will be a mix of a lot of things. So there will be things like us reducing the emissions and helping to reduce the emissions. There will be other things like carbon capture to whatever gets out, because we will never go to zero. It will be captured and used for something else. So there will always be a mix, but that's very slowly moving into this direction of having this. And also a problem is that even if the cement and concrete producers would now produce this type of concrete and cement, the users of it, they would, like the construction people, they would not demand it. That's also a problem. That also on the demand side, because the knowledge is not really there, that people don't want it. Because for the construction companies, that is something else. They have to build it in a different way. It takes longer. So the whole building process takes more time, and time is money. So they don't really want to do it if it's not explicitly asked for it. And that's a bit of the problem of this chain of who's responsible, because the people in the very front, and you said, for example, like the banks that are investing into sustainable construction, what they get sold as sustainable is very often not really sustainable. But the banks, how should they know? They are no expert in the field. And that's also something where the knowledge needs to be moved a bit more into these places. So the people who are giving the orders, those people also need to understand more, okay, what is actually sustainable? Because especially in concrete, long time now that using recycling material, so not gravel from the nature or sand or fresh sand, but recycled material was always said, okay, that's the most sustainable you can get. And it is good for sure using this, but it has no effect on the carbon emissions. No, it even is a bit worse, slightly worse. And that is something that people were not aware of. So when you start these conversations, bringing people together, then it's the moment when they start realizing and saying, okay, I want to have this now. And they need to push a bit more. And the good thing here is they are also willing, or often willing, to pay a bit more if it's more sustainable. And I think that's the way how to get it there, to really go from both sides and bring this forward.
Yeah, I mean, you touched so many things. I'm so biased because, as a circular economy professional, keep those materials and products in use, reduce waste of materials. And we talk a lot about carbon. We have this carbon tunnel vision. And yes, we are emitting a lot of excess carbon into the atmosphere, but we have more problems than just carbon.
Yes.
You talked about carbon capture. And actually, I remember that I'm just going to put the link in the chat, but these people, Blue Planet Systems, they are using natural systems embedded into cement-like, and part of San Francisco airport is built with it. So the building captures carbon, right? So think about ecosystem services. So all the things that we build operate at least the same that the forest next door. How would that look like? Rather than thinking about offsetting, it's about the things that we put in place. They become regenerative, right? Because we need to go beyond mission zero. And one more link that comes to mind, knowing that we have another biomimicry practitioner in the call, is this self-healing concrete. Have you heard about that? Tell us, and what you guys going to do around that?
Not much. It's not much in focus. I mean, self-healing concrete, I think it's the chat. It's the Roman already had it, that they could produce a concrete that if there's a hole in it, it would close itself in a short amount of time, or like in a certain amount of time. That still exists. I talked to a user recently, and they said, yeah, well, there is concrete where you can really drill a big hole in it, and from time it will just, when it gets wet again, it will just close itself. That is super fancy. Of course, especially, I don't know, underwater or something. Super nice if you have these properties. And I said already that Romans had it. we will not do much about this. But the good thing is, like with our software that we produce, this is one of these more complex concrete types. So our software can also be used, luckily, for producing those, but it's not our main focus to produce those. But it's a cool thing. If you see this one's really nice.
I never thought concrete and cool would come into the same sentence, so that's an enlightenment for me. But I love it. Self-healing. Okay, are there any other questions?
I was going to say,
yeah.
I was just going to say, what have the Romans ever done for us? But I think you might all be too young to understand the quote. Look it up.
No.
It's a Monty Python quote from a film called, you know it? Yeah.
Life of Brian, right?
Of course they invented it.
Brilliant. So yeah, I've got one more question around convincing stakeholders in large organizations to invest in sort of sustainability. How did you go about that? Because that's a tough conversation.
That's a tough conversation, and so in the end, having the big stakeholders to convince, especially in bigger groups or bigger companies, it actually only or mostly only goes about over money, to show them the financial benefit they have with such a solution, which to include, and how they can really either money, or what also going very well in our case is basically that there is a shortage of skilled labor. And that's also something we can help them, like with less people, you can have the same quality and same amount of work done. But again, here, the one thing that really helps us is this, in terms of this threat of the carbon, the emission trading system in the European Union, for example, that we can tell them, okay, look, you need to reduce carbon emissions, otherwise it will be very expensive in a certain amount of time. And of course, if you do it, your competitors, you will win against your competitors. So that's always the storyline also a bit. I mean, of course, for us, it's really important to reduce the emissions, but to be able to really sell it, they need to see it on the bank account. That's it, unfortunately.
But there's always one place to start, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yes, go for it, Mary Ellen. Oh, you saying bye?
No, I was just saying goodbye. I have to go,
sorry.
but I said thank you in the chat. That's all right.
No, that's lovely. Thank you so much for joining. All right. Okay, guys. Well, we are, I think, coming to an end, just because a few people are dropping off. So I don't know if we need to take this time, and if there are no other questions that we've got with the group live right now, then I'll just pause for a moment just in case there's anybody peeps. No. Then thank you so much, David, for presenting today. It really has been quite insightful, and I knew it was going to be good because I had a sneak peek before, but it's as everybody sort of said, it's so inspiring, and it's really amazing. Like, it really brings home to me, because we focus so much on, you know, frameworks to be able to actually use, and when we talk about agile and agility, that's what it's about. It's about going back to those values and being like, you know, what the heck can we do with it, and how can we progress forward, rather than just like, oh, we've just done Scrum or just done this. So thank you for also just surfacing that and just showing that it, you know, can work. So the last thing then, before you guys hop off, we will put it in our feedback message as well, is that we love feedback. We love the goods, we love the bads, everything in between. I try and think of it as helpful. So if you've got any helpful feedback for us to try and make things better, or just to reach out to see what you think of the session, then we'd really love to hear that. Ines will be popping in. Oh, she has already. Amazing. She has popped in the chat. It takes about 1 minute to fill out. And if there's any interesting topics that you would like us to bring speakers on, then please also suggest that, because we try our best to get people that, you know, you guys want. Otherwise, what's the point in having this? So thank you very much again, David. Really appreciate your time and your effort in doing this. And other than that, I think it's pretty much over and out.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was great to speak here, and yeah, really thank you, and also for the questions, for the interesting questions.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.